With the year rapidly drawing to a close, it's time for me to release my top 25 wines of the year. Unlike with most of these lists, these are not necessarily new release wines, as I tend to prefer wines with greater age and complexity. These are just wines that I had the good fortune to taste at some point throughout the year, and which made the biggest impression. It's going to take me a while to get through all 25 of these wines, so I'm going to cover this list in two parts. In this video, I'm going to discuss wines 11 through 25, beginning with number 25 and working my way backwards. According to George Burns, you can't help getting older, but you don't have to get old. One of the reasons that I'm a big fan of Blanc de Blanc champagne is that Chardonnay tends to age much better than Pinot Noir and Meunier, which are the other primary grapes used for champagne. So this 1973 Dom Ruinart Blanc de Blanc champagne comes in at number 25 in my list of top 25 wines of 2023. Despite its age, this wine was remarkably fresh and vibrant. Descriptors included baked apple, brioche, hazelnut, marzipan, wet rock, and hints of caramel. There was ample acidity to balance the intensity of the flavors. The finish was long and complex. Definitely an extremely impressive champagne, and a producer that is still firing on all cylinders today. Back in 1964, Lyndon Baines Johnson was President of the United States. Mary Poppins was topping the box office. I Want to Hold Your Hand by the Beatles was the #1 song. And the grapes for this outstanding 1964 Albert Bichot Volnay were harvested. The day after tasting this wine, it still haunted me in a good way. Elegant flavors and aromas included dried cherry, dried violets, orange peel, leather, sandalwood, forest floor, and mushroom. This wine was resilient and did not fall off over the 2 to 3 hours in which we enjoyed it. My friends from Albert Bichot may need to close their ears for this next part, but I was tasting this wine with a master sommelier, and he speculated that there may have been a little bit of Syrah included in this wine. Syrah was a secret blending ingredient that was used in Burgundy and other parts of France decades ago, although that's certainly no longer the case today. If you're interested in trying Albert Bichot wines, they're making outstanding wines currently as well, so definitely give them a try. I'm particularly fond of the 2019 and 2021 vintages, although there's not a whole lot of 2021 to go around. Next up is the 1973 La Rioja Alta 904 Gran Reserva Centenario. As the name suggests, this special bottling was released by La Rioja Alta to celebrate its 100th anniversary back in 1990 after extended aging at the estate. I was fortunate to find a bottle of this special wine at a restaurant in Los Angeles in pristine condition, as they obtained it directly from La Rioja Alta. This iconic Rioja resides in a special metal presentation box that I actually took home with me and saved. There's all kinds of information and literature about the wine included inside the box, and I also saved the bottle. So that's a nice memento from this tasting. Inside the box, they also included an extremely informative hard copy of a text sheet, which I also saved. Descriptors included gorgeous dried red cherry, dried cranberry, balsamic, leather, forest floor, and mixed spice. The finish was long and extraordinarily complex. Really a very memorable drinking experience. This wine needed about 15 minutes in the glass to open up, and it did begin to fall off after about an hour or so, but at its peak, it was absolutely one of the top 25 wines of 2023. Inspired by the red wines of Burgundy, Roberto Vergio started his own winery in 1986. A few years later, he received a 100-point score from Robert Parker and is now widely regarded as one of the top producers in all of Barolo. I was able to visit Roberto Vergio at the winery in La Mora last month. While I was there, I had the opportunity to taste the 2008 Roberto Vergio Barolo Reserva Fossati Casanere. This special wine was aged for 10 years at the estate before it was released. While it's still incredibly youthful, it was already simply stunning and absolutely one of the best wines that I tasted during my trip to Piemonte. If you're interested in tasting Roberto Vergio's wines without spending more than $100 per bottle, you'll definitely want to try the Barbera as well. He does an outstanding job with Barbera, and those wines offer compelling quality for the price. The next wine in my top 25 wines of 2023 is the 1990 Lanson Vintage Brut Champagne. This is another wine that I tasted at the winery with the winemaker. This bottle was from Magnum, and it was from a bottle that was recently disgorged shortly before I visited. Lanson's champagnes are very underrated in my view, and they're also quite age-worthy, which is one reason why I'm a big fan. This is so because, among other things, they emphasize long lees aging, and they suppress malolactic fermentation for their higher-end champagnes, which gives them extra acidity and definitely helps them age well for an extended period of time. If you have not yet visited Lanson, it's also very conveniently located close to Paris. It's just a quick 45-minute train ride, and that's definitely a fun day trip if you're able to do it the next time you're in Paris. The 1999 Chateau Margaux is quite possibly the best 1999 Bordeaux that I've had to date, although certainly Chateau Palmer and Haut-Brion made very strong efforts as well. While some 2000 Bordeaux is shut down at the moment based on my recent tastings, the 1999s are generally in an outstanding place. So if you have some 1999 Bordeaux in your cellar, you'll definitely want to dive in soon as the water is warm. This impressive Margaux featured alluring aromatics of black cherry, red currant, raspberry, crushed violets, and forest floor. On the palate, it was sultry, silky, seductive, and smooth. While this wine was already extremely impressive with just a pop and pour, it continued to put on weight and gain in intensity over an hour in the decanter. 1982 was a legendary vintage in Bordeaux and the best vintage since 1961, although many speculate that the 2022 vintage may be even better. It's always a treat to taste the 1982 Lynch-Bages. Last year, I tasted the 1982 Lynch-Bages as part of a 4-vintage vertical of Lynch-Bages, and I actually slightly preferred the 1990 to the 1982. This time, however, I tasted both of those wines again as part of a Bordeaux blind tasting that featured some outstanding wines from the 1980s and the 1990s, and this time the 1982 had the edge, although the 1990 still showed well. While the 1990 Lynch-Bages is certainly flamboyant and exuberant, the 1982 is stylistically a bit different, as it's more reserved, and it's definitely a classic claret. The 1982 is fully mature and well within its drinking window, so while you don't need to rush to drink it, there's not going to be much upside either unless you're fortunate enough to have it in a large format. For those interested in tasting more recent vintages of Lynch-Bages, I definitely recommend the 2019 and the 2020 vintages, as both were excellent. And if you'd like to learn more about Bordeaux's tremendous 2022 vintage, be sure to check a video I did that's linked in the description below. Promontory is a prominent wine producer in Napa Valley that produced its first vintage in 2008. Like Harlan Estate, Promontory is a Bill Harlan project. The fruit for Promontory wine comes from a largely undeveloped area called the Territory that's located along Oakville's southwestern ridge. I was able to visit the winery in February, and while I was there, one of the wines that I tasted was the impressive 2010 Promontory. This is a wine that I tasted from half bottle following an extended decant. Notwithstanding the small format and the extended aeration, this wine remained incredibly structured. Nevertheless, it did have an impressive fruit profile and was one of the better wines that I tasted during my visit to Napa earlier this year. If you get an opportunity to try Promontory wines, definitely take advantage of it. They do need some extended bottle aging, so if you have them in your cellar, I would definitely wait 5 to 10 years before you start digging in. If you're interested in wine recommendations, wine collecting strategies, and learning more about wine, please do subscribe to my channel. I've been collecting wine for more than 15 years and also have a level 4 diploma from the WSET. So I have both formal certification as well as substantial practical knowledge from the School of Hard Knocks. Located on Bordeaux's right bank in Palmerol, Le Conscient is one of my favorite producers in Palmerol. Known for producing wines of incredible elegance, Conscient makes wines that are generally 80% Merlot and 20% Cabernet Franc. I was able to taste the 1990 Conscient as part of a blind tasting that included a flight of 3 wines from Pomerol. Despite some fierce competition, this incredible 1990 Conseillant came out on top. This wine is sensual with a sultry, silky mouthfeel. It was in an absolutely perfect place the time that we tasted it. Flavors and aromas included red cherry, red plum, violets, truffles, wet rock, and mixed spice. And if you're a fan of Conseillant, you'll definitely want to consider the 2022 Conseillant as well, which is currently available on futures, as by all accounts, Conseillant knocked it out of the park that vintage. Krug's Clos de Menil has only been produced around 20 times. This is so because it's only released in vintages that will produce an exceptional expression of Chardonnay, or Blanc de Blanc Champagne, from the famous Clos de Menil vineyard, which is a 1.84 acre plot that's located in a wall vineyard in Le Mesnil-sur-Oger. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to taste the 2003 Krug Clos de Menil, and it was simply stunning. While this wine is still somewhat youthful and will only gain complexity with additional bottle age, it's already in a tremendous place. Flavors and aromas included baked apple, lemon, kumquat, hibiscus, brioche, ginger, and honey. There was incredible intensity and concentration, and yet this wine was still also extremely elegant. The finish lingered for close to a minute, yet still left you wanting more. Coming in at number 15 in the top 25 wines of 2023 is a 1996 Ramosne Montrachet. This is a wine that my buddy found in the back of his cellar and generously shared it one night, thinking that it was time to drink up. While many white Burgundy can suffer from premox or premature oxidation, this wine was absolutely perfect. In my view, Chardonnay from Montrachet is the absolute pinnacle or highest expression of Chardonnay. While I had several other Montrachets last year that were impressive, those were much younger bottles, and it's a rare treat indeed to be able to find one that's in good condition with this much bottle age on it. Ex-Chateau bottlings of the outstanding 1982 Du Cru Beaucaillou have finished in my top 25 the past 2 years. So this summer, when we had a 12 vintage vertical tasting of Du Cru Beaucaillou that included another Ex-Chateau bottling from 1982, I was expecting that this would be the third consecutive year in which it finished in the top 25. We divided those 12 wines into 2 different flights. The 1982 was in a flight with the 1985, 86, 88, 89, and 90, and as expected, the 1982 was definitely the wine of that flight. The second flight, however, featured the 1995, 96, 99, 2000, 2001, and 2005. And the 2000 Du Cru Beaucaillou won that second flight. Following these first 2 flights, we did a head-to-head comparison between the 1982 and the 2000. And to my surprise, the 2000 definitely had the edge that night. It had slightly more concentration and a little bit longer finish. So while it was very close, this year it's the 2000 Du Cru Beaucaillou that finished number 14 in my top 25 wines of 2023. If you're interested in learning more about Du Cru Beaucaillou or the 12 vintage vertical tasting that we did earlier this year, be sure to check the links in the description below, as I did a separate video about that tasting with 8 takeaways for wine collectors. Located in Saint-Emilion on Bordeaux's right bank, Château Angelus has been a leading producer of Bordeaux since at least the 1989 vintage or so. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to taste the impressive 1990 Château Angelus. This wine is 60% Merlot and 40% Cabernet Franc. Following a brief decant, this full-bodied, powerful wine revealed impressive depth, layers of flavor, and a long, complex finish. A truly outstanding wine. For those interested in trying Angelus without spending several $100s or more, you'll definitely want to give the second wine some consideration, as that wine is very impressive as well, and you can purchase it for closer to $100 or so. It's no secret that I'm a big fan of Syrah, so I was very excited earlier this year that we got the tasting group together and we tasted some of the top Syrah wines from around the world. 2 of those wines finished in a tie for number 12 in my top 25 wines of 2023. The first of them is the 1982 Penfolds Grange. This impressive bottle of 1982 Penfolds Grange was drinking so youthfully that it almost seemed to be aging in reverse, like Benjamin Button. Penfolds Grange is universally regarded as one of the most collectible wines in the entire world. While it's Syrah-based, many vintages also include a small percentage of Cabernet Sauvignon. Flavors and aromas for this impressive wine included blackberry, black cherry, plum, and blueberry. These dark fruit flavors were complemented by leather, spice, and eucalyptus. There was an incredible finish that lasted at least 45 seconds, an extremely memorable wine. Unfortunately, the price for new vintages of Penfolds Grange has skyrocketed in the past 10 years, but savvy collectors are still able to cherry-pick and shop around for older vintages of Penfolds Grange and pay much less than the price of a new release and still have vintages that are much more approachable and ready to drink than some of the new releases, which will require decades of age before they'll show their best. While many Northern Rhone producers tout their single vineyard wines, for Chave, it's all about blending. Since Red Hermitage must be 100% Syrah, they don't blend different grapes, but rather they blend Syrah from different locations in different plots around Hermitage. For that reason, Chave Hermitage is often described as the essence of Hermitage in the glass. The 16th generation of the Chave family has been in charge of winemaking since 1992, namely J.L. Chave. Chave's winemaking approach is characterized by minimal intervention. So they use no chemicals in the vineyard, they harvest low yields of fully ripe fruit, they use ambient yeast for fermentation, they don't use filtering, and they use very modest amounts of new oak for maturation. When you do these group tastings like the ones I've been discussing in this video, we usually vote for wine of the night at some point. And sometimes there's timing issues, where wines that should perform better will sometimes not show their best by the time that the votes are cast. And that was definitely the case with the 1999 Chave Hermitage. This wine finished third or so in the voting, but once the votes were cast and a winner was declared, this wine kept rallying and it absolutely blew up over the next couple hours. So for that reason, I consider this wine to be in a two-way tie with the Penfolds Grange for number 12 in my top 25 wines of 2023. Ornella's Maceto Vineyard is located in the Bulgari region of Tuscany. The vineyard's proximity to the sea, its ideal soils, and its microclimate make it ideal for the production of high-quality Merlot and contribute to the wine's character. While Maceto has gotten extremely expensive in terms of price, I had a friend who was fortunate enough to buy a couple bottles of the 2002 vintage on release. For those wines, he paid around $184, so certainly a savvy purchase at the time. Earlier this year, he was gracious enough to share one of those bottles with us, and we enjoyed the 2002 Maceto over the course of 3 to 4 hours. Even though it's been more than 20 years since the fruit for this impressive wine has been harvested, this is definitely a wine that will continue to benefit from additional bottle age. But even at this early stage in its development, this is still an absolutely world-class wine and absolutely one of my favorite tasting experiences from 2023.